What's up, guys? Welcome back to another edition of Sports Takeover. We have another exciting week of NFL in the books. Week 15 just concluded last night with Monday Night Football, and we have a lot to get into today. There's a lot of exciting stuff that is coming. We have the playoff picture really heating up. There's a lot of different things that are, a lot of different scenarios that can take place in the upcoming next 2 weeks of the season. There's a lot of playoff positioning that's taking place, and it's my favorite time of the year. It's the most exciting thing that we could possibly talk about right now. So, with further ado, let's jump into it. So, looking at the AFC playoff picture right now, the Chiefs, we have them at the 1 seed at 11-3. The Texans moved into the 2 seed currently right now at 10-4. With the Patriots losing to the Steelers last week, they jumped into the 2 seed, which will ultimately give them a first round bye if they're able to hold on to it, which is huge because if you think about the Patriots and their 8 Super Bowl runs that they've had, or their 8 Super Bowl appearances that they've had, every single one of those years, they've had a first round bye. They've had either the 1 or the 2 seed. So with them having to go on the road and play in the playoffs this year at somebody else's stadium, that is huge. That they are like a completely different team on the road than they are at home. So I think that really bodes well for anybody else that's going to be playing against them, and ultimately it's going to hurt the Patriots. So the Pats jumped to, or excuse me, they fell to the third slot this year. With that loss to the Steelers, which was they just didn't look good. They ultimately didn't look good. Tom Brady looked his age. Gronkowski didn't look like an X factor like he normally is, and they just couldn't really get anything going. So, credit the Steelers, but ultimately I'm looking at it as the Patriots didn't really show me much. They didn't show me that they're going to be able to kind of make that run deep in the playoffs this year like they normally do. Looking at the 4 seed, as of right now, we still have the Steelers at 8-5-1. Now this is where it kind of gets interesting because the Steelers and the Ravens are both playing for that AFC North Division title. So, as of right now, since the Steelers had that tie earlier in the year, they're a half game ahead of the Ravens, who are at 8-6, and currently in the number 6 seed in the AFC playoffs. Now the exciting thing about this upcoming week in Week 16 is that the Steelers, they go on the road to the Saints, one of the hottest teams in the NFL, currently the number 1 seed in the NFC. If the Steelers or the Ravens, who the Ravens play this week at the Chargers, who are also one of the hottest teams in the NFL, the Steelers at the Saints and the Ravens at the Chargers. If either one of these teams lose this week to those opponents, and the Colts are able to beat the Giants at home, the Colts will be the number 6 seed in the playoffs. So there's a lot riding on the line this week. There's a lot at stake for a lot of teams. I would think, the Colts are going to be playing at an all-time high with a chance to, ultimately win out and be in the playoffs. Because in my opinion, either one of those teams are going to lose, right? We're going to have either the Steelers go on the road and lose to the Saints, or the Ravens go on the road and lose to the Chargers. I don't think both of them are going to win those games. I think that's a really tough task to ask for both of them, which ultimately will kick them out of the one of those slots and ultimately slide the Colts in, which is very exciting to think about. Right now, we have the Chargers in the 5th slot. That 5th slot is pretty much solidified at this point. It's really a matter of if it's going to be the Chiefs or the Chargers. Right now, the Chiefs hold the tiebreaker. That's why they're the 1 seed in the AFC. Now, if we look at, kind of this weekend going forward and what happens, obviously if the Chiefs win, the Chargers lose, the Chiefs pretty much are going to solidify a division title because they'd be not only a game ahead, but they've had the tiebreaker as well. The 6th seed right now, we're looking at the Ravens. But again, ultimately I feel like that's going to change this weekend when they go on the road to the Chargers. I don't think they're able to hang with the Chargers. Now, with that being said, Lamar Jackson has definitely proven that he can be a capable enough NFL quarterback. I don't see him yet as a starting playoff quarterback, especially somebody who's going to be able to go into LA and defeat one of the hottest teams in the NFL right now. I just don't see it happening. So the Ravens' chances of making the playoffs are actually lower than the Colts are, and I think it says a lot about who their opponent is coming up this weekend. Um, so the teams in the hunt in the AFC, technically we still have the Bengals and the Browns. Um, I don't think we really need to talk about that, worry about that. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of hope for them. They need a ton of things to go right and a ton of help for them to be able to get in the playoffs. Really, the two teams that we're talking about in the AFC playoff hunt is the Colts and the Titans. Um, Now, like I said before, if the Colts win this weekend and either the Ravens or Steelers lose, the Colts are going to be in that sixth seed. Now, let's say, for instance, the Ravens lose this weekend to the Chargers and the Colts lose at home to the Giants. Now, and then let's say the Colts win week 16, or excuse me, week 17 versus the Titans, and the Ravens win their week 17 game. If both of those things happen, so if both teams lose week 16 and both teams win week 17, the Colts hold the strength of schedule um, tiebreaker. Their strength of schedule is a little bit better, so they would technically be ahead of the Ravens at that point and ultimately get that sixth seed over them. So there's a lot of things that can happen in their favor, even if they do lose this week. But ultimately, the Colts really hold their own fate. They really need to win out, and I think they'll ultimately get in. Um, Looking at the NFC playoff picture, still got the Saints in the one seed at 12 and 2. I think they're pretty solid with having that one seed. I don't think there's a lot that's going to go wrong for them, honestly. The Rams right now they're only one game ahead of the Bears for having that first round bye at 11 and 3. With two losses in a row, that kind of stings a little bit, especially with only 2 weeks left into the season. You really want to be the hottest you've been all year at this point in the year. And right now they've taken a little bit of a step back, so I'm curious to see how they respond this week. The third seed, the Bears, I think they've definitely proven that they can hang with anybody in the league with that defense. I think Trubisky has definitely proven that he's not just a game manager, but that he can also kind of lead a team into the playoffs and be able to do enough and do what it takes to ultimately, win a playoff game, which I think is what they're looking for this year. The Cowboys in the four seed, they got they got shut out this week by the Colts 23 to nothing, which was definitely a sight to see. Definitely very surprising. Now they are a lot different on the road than they are at home, so that was not as surprising that they took an L, but it was surprising in the manner that they did it. The Colts absolutely stomped the Cowboys this weekend. They picked them up and pretty much took their lunch money, is how that game went. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond this week as well. The Seahawks are in that number 5 slot right now. Um, they don't have a chance to win the division, so they're pretty much looking at one of those wild card spots. So I think they've all but wrapped up at least one of those because the teams right below them, their record is not as good. So I think they're in pretty good shape. The Vikings are still holding on to that number 6 slot with 7-6-1. They're only a half game ahead of the Eagles and the Redskins, who are both at 7-7. Um, the Vikings scare me a little bit. I don't think they're going to win a playoff game this year. As of right now, they would be playing the Bears. I don't think that's a good matchup for them at all. I don't think Cousins is going to be able to, dice up that defense like, he might think he can in Chicago in the cold weather. I don't think it's a good matchup for him at all. Um, and yeah, I'm really worried about them. So that's kind of the seeding right now, how everything's looking. Now, if you look at if the season ended today, so if there was no more games in the season, if everything was already over, we didn't have 2 weeks left. Let's pretend like everything's just already wrapped up. So right now you would have in the AFC the Chiefs and the Texans with a bye, first round bye. Um, you would have a matchup of the Ravens going on the road to play the Patriots. Okay, not the most exciting matchup. Um, there's not a whole lot of glamour in that matchup. I mean, you have a 41-year-old Brady who has kind of been the same player his whole career. A lot of people want to call him boring. He might be the Tim Duncan of the NFL if you want to call it that. Um, the most exciting thing in that game, I think, is seeing what Lamar Jackson would bring in the playoffs. Obviously, he's just a rookie. He's only, not even played half the season right now. So I think it'd be very interesting to see what he would be able to do on the road in Foxborough. Um, The other AFC matchup, you're looking at the Chargers on the road in Pittsburgh. Um, the Chargers, obviously, they beat the Steelers a few weeks ago in Pittsburgh, so they're definitely capable of doing it. It's a different thing to do it in the playoffs, though. The Chargers have definitely had a lot of um, struggles in the recent years, and with even not making the playoffs, or um, just struggling in the playoffs as well. So it would be it's very interesting to see kind of how they're going to be able to handle the pressure this year with having a lot better record. A lot of people think they're the best team in the AFC. Um, so that'll be interesting to kind of see how they handle that too. The NFC, we're looking at the Saints and the Rams for a first round bye. Um, both teams, I think, are going to get that. I don't think they're going to be caught. Um, Now the matchups we're looking at, the Vikings would go on the road in Chicago. We just kind of talked about that a minute ago. Um, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I think the Bears would honestly dominate them. I don't think there's any type of matchup there at all. I think the Bears kind of have an easy out to get to the divisional round, honestly. So I think that's kind of how that game's going to go. The other game, the Seahawks at the Cowboys. This one's a little bit more interesting because the Cowboys have obviously been pretty hot as of recently, but what's always been their kryptonite? It's been the playoffs, right? They lost, um, last year. Jason Garrett, he doesn't have any playoff wins yet. He's only had one playoff game, so the pressure's on him, man. The pressure is really on the Cowboys this year. As of right now, they would be hosting the playoff game, so everything's kind of falling into their lap. There's no excuse this year. They have a great defense. They have Zeke, who's playing at an all-time high. Dak's playing really well. They, went out and traded for Amari Cooper, their deep threat. So they don't have any excuses to why they cannot win a home game in the playoffs this year. If they don't, in my opinion, they really need to search long and hard and kind of think about if Jason Garrett is the right guy to lead that team, um, for years to come. In my opinion, he's not. Um, but I'm also a little bit harder on coaches. For example, Marvin Lewis has been with Cincinnati for what, 16, 17 years and never won a playoff game, and he's still there. So stuff like that to me is a little ridiculous. I don't think Jason Garrett should have a 10-year window to where if he's still not won a playoff game, he's going to still be the coach. Um, but that's just my opinion. So that'll be it for today's edition. Next week we'll get into the playoff positioning again after week 16. Kind of see where teams fall. I think it'll be a very exciting next week. We're going to have 1 week left in the season. Who's going to move up? Who's going to fall? Are the Colts going to bump into that number 6 seed? Are the Ravens or the Steelers going to fall out after being in there all year? And kind of what is going to happen this week to really make you say, wow, that team's going to be unstoppable in the playoffs, or man, that team is hot. Who's going to stop them in the playoffs? So we'll get into all that next year as well. We'll talk about kind of where everybody is positioned next year for the teams who uh, aren't going to be in the playoffs this year, and the teams that are already eliminated, kind of where do they stand going into next year? What do they need to do in order to be back in the playoffs for the next season in 2019? Um, Let me know what you guys want to talk about next week as well. If there's any questions that you want to throw at me, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Um, whatever you guys want to talk about. Who do you think is going to make a run in the playoffs? Who do you think is going to be that team that might be that underdog to go on the road and win a couple playoff games this year? Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Um, Please subscribe. If you like this video, please hit that thumbs up button. Second video, so definitely want to be shown the love. I'll definitely be showing you guys some love too with answering all your questions and comments. So yeah, guys, it was nice chatting with you today, and we'll see you next time.